I like to hike. I enjoy it, and I like to do very aggressive, intensive, extreme hiking. I've lost count of the dozens of times I've hiked the Grand Canyon down the river and back, or rim to rim. 6 hours is my best time to the river and back, 2 down, 4 out, and then 10 hours is the best I did across. I don't run, so I enjoy it. I did Cactus to Clouds, start at 400 feet, go to 10,400 feet. It's the largest one-way elevation gain hike in North America. I really enjoy doing it. Now, a lot of people know I like to hike, so this is what here. Could you take me? I'd like to go hike the Grand Canyon. I have friends from out of state, and they want to come in, and I'm like, okay, sure, I'd love to. So we get scheduled, and then I'd give them instructions on how to train to be ready, and they never are. They always think they're ready, and then they discover they're not. It's a mile deep. So, over 5,000 feet elevation change down and another 5,000 feet up. Unless you go north rim to south rim, when you get to add an extra 1,000 feet of elevation change, you get to about 11,000 some odd feet. And so, it's enjoyable. And here's what happens. We start out, and they think, oh, we'll do this in 9-10 hours down to the river and back. And it's 14, 15, 16. And we're coming out. The last 4 miles are exceedingly steep and just nothing but steps coming out. And so this is what I'll hear. Man, I'm sorry, I'm holding you back. I'm like, dude, if I wanted to hike fast, I wouldn't be hiking with you. It's fine. We're your pace. Fine. We're your pace. All right. And then we get, man, can we just stop and rest for a little bit? I'm like, okay, we'll stop and rest for a little bit. But don't take your pack off and don't sit down. We're not going to be here 20 minutes. We'll stop, and if you want to sit on the ground, you can, or just stand and lean up against the wall there and just take a few breaths and drink a little water. You're eating plenty of food, you get plenty of snacks, trail mates get plenty of salt and everything. Oh, yeah, I'm just sort of checking on him. And it's probably one of the, I was hiking with a friend. It was the first time to hike it, and one point he said, man, dude, you know how defeating it is when I look up and you're way up there above me. Like, that's only like 3 switchbacks. He's like, but man, I was like, okay, if you can step up to 1.5 miles an hour, then I'll slow down and we can hike out at that pace. And so we did, with plenty of stops. But when people stop, hey, can we just rest for a little bit? I always tell them the same thing. Trail's not getting any shorter. Doesn't matter how long you stop, you're not shortening the trail. And the trail, and so when they finish, they always, I'll hear from one of their friends, someone say, hey man, I know you took so-and-so, and I heard you kept saying the trail's not getting any shorter. I said, well, the reason is because the trail's not getting any shorter. Man, can we just rest for a little bit? Well, in Hebrews chapter 4, the Bible actually talks about rest and strenuous labor and achievement. So if you turn to Hebrews chapter 4, we'll look at the first 10 verses. There are actually 3 rests that are described, 3 different ones that are described in here. So the Bible says, therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them, because they were not united by faith with those who listened. For we who have believed enter that rest, as he has said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this passage he said, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience, again he appoints a certain day, today, saying through David so long afterward, in the words already quoted, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. So the first rest that's described is in the first 4 verses, and that's God's rest at creation. So therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. So there's a rest that has not been achieved. And now verse 2 is kind of the key of the whole passage, for good news came to us, just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened. So there was good news. You've come out of Egypt where you were slaves. You've been brought through the wilderness, and I'm going to bring you into the land. But they didn't trust God. They heard the message, but they didn't believe it by faith. And the same thing is true in New Testament times and today. The good news, the phrase oftentimes translated gospel in the Bible, the good news is you are guilty because you've broken God's law. But God, by His abounding grace and love, sent His Son Jesus to die on the cross to pay the penalty for our guilt, to be buried, and to rise again on the third day. That is the good news. But hearing it does not get you to heaven. Hearing it does not get you forgiveness. We have heard it, but we also have to receive it by faith. We have to trust that that is the truth. We have to commit to it. We have to believe that what God has said is true. And so what happened was they heard the good news that they would be entering into the promised land, but they didn't believe that God would actually pull it off. They didn't trust Him. And so it was not united by faith, so it did them no good. Hearing the good news doesn't do you any good unless you believe the good news. Put your faith in it. And so that's why this is kind of the key statement here. Verse 3, for those who have believed entered that rest. As He said, as I swore my wrath, they will not enter my rest. This is a quote from Psalm 95, verse 11, which is a reference back to the whole wilderness thing. So here's basically what happened in a real short version. Slaves in Egypt, God delivers them by the plagues. They get into the wilderness. They're headed to the land that God had promised, and they disobey God. They rebel against God. And so everybody over the age of 20 is going to die over the course of 40 years of just living in the wilderness. And so that's the historical background. You read all about that in the book of Numbers in the Old Testament. You get all the details. And so it says David makes mention of this. So they will not enter my rest. Now that raises a question. But wait a minute. I thought God's work was done. Genesis says that after God created everything, He rested. He's finished. And yet, it speaks here of a rest that's coming. So in the second half of verse 3, although His works were finished from the foundation of the world. For He has somewhere spoken. Now you may think, oh, wait a minute, why does He say somewhere spoken? Why doesn't He just say Genesis 2:2 when He quotes it? Well, here's the reason. Names of books, chapters and verses don't come around for a few hundred years after Jesus. In His day, they just had scrolls. And so He would say, open the first scroll of Moses, what we now know as Genesis. So He just says somewhere in one of those scrolls, I don't know about you, but I'm glad somebody named the books and gave us chapters and verses. Else I would have said, this morning, I'm somewhere near the end of the New Testament scroll, and this is what it says, so I hope you can find it. Plus that, the thought of lugging a giant scroll back and forth to church, and you'd need quite a few of them to contain the whole Bible, would be a daunting task. And so we're thankful for that. But that's why He says, somewhere He's spoken of the seventh day in this way. God rested on the seventh day from all His works. Now, let's just see if we can clarify a few things here. First of all, God is God. Yes. And as God, He is infinitely powerful. He has limitless power and strength and energy. So because of that, God does not get tired. And I'm thankful. Can you imagine if I was in a dangerous situation and God says, it's okay, I'm sorry. Like, I'm glad God doesn't get tired. He has limitless energy. So if God does not get tired, and He has limitless power and energy, why does the Bible say that He rested? Well, the reason is because we think of rest as, I'm physically tired, I need a nap. Some of you will put this to the test this afternoon. And so we need rest to recover from exertion. But the idea of rest in the Bible is to sit back and be satisfied with what you have done. So God made the world in 6 days. On day one, He created light, meaning light is not an inherent attribute of God's. Light is something that God created, waves and photons and all that. And probably the idea is the initial light was the first physical manifestation of the glory of God. And that's the light we have on day one. And it's going to be separated from the dark. And then God makes the waters above and waters below, what we call sky and waters, seas. And then on day 3, He brings forth the dry land. Then on day 4, He's going to populate the skies with the sun and the moon. And they're just called not actually called that, they're the greater and lesser light to rule over the day and the night. And we have their timekeepers to keep the time. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he made the stars. And the Bible just kind of drops that in there. The reason is because everybody in the ancient world worshiped the stars, and lots of people today still worship the stars. They want to know what their zodiac is. Look, your life is not determined by a bunch of flaming balls of gas way out in space. All right, we don't worship the stars, so it's called a polemic. There's kind of dropped in there to show they're really not that significant and important in what God was doing. And so then we're going to fill the skies and the water with birds and fish, and then we'll fill the dry land with animals, and then last of all, the apex of God's creation, human beings, Adam and Eve. So God does all that in 6 days. So on day 7, God does go, whew, that was exhausting. It's not like that. God sits back and enjoys what he made. Now I want to just kind of see if I can really drive this into your brains. God isn't always serious and focused because it's such a big job upholding the universe. It's not really that big a deal for God. He made it, upholding it, it's not that big a deal. Okay? In other words, God has plenty of bonus room for enjoyment. That's the thing. A lot of Christians somehow think that God never smiles. God has no joy, no pleasure, no nothing. He's just serious, just always serious. And the thought of God laughing almost seems heretical to some people. But God made pretty much the whole universe, and we didn't even know about it for pretty much all of human history. That's okay. He did the same thing on the earth. There were deep sea fish that were not even discovered until like 100 years ago. So, now one of the things that I find fascinating that God made that we didn't discover, actually the first one until 1991. So about 30 years ago, we discovered the first exoplanet. And so we discovered that we now are aware of more than 5,000 exoplanets. They're really cool. So if you wonder what an exoplanet, that means a planet that revolves around a star, just like there are 9 planets in our solar system, but that's another sermon. And so all 9 rotate around our star, Sol, around the sun. And so we discovered over 5,000 exoplanets out in the universe. So you may ask yourself the question, why in the world would God make thousands of planets way out in the far reaches of outer space and nobody knew about it until 3 decades ago? Why in the world would God do that? Because he liked it. Don't think God made everything about you. Do you ever think that maybe God made it just because he enjoys it? He likes it. He thinks it's awesome. And so when we see that, and then the James Webb telescope is just transforming everything that we know about the universe, and pretty much all secular theories are getting turned on their head because they're wrong. And so, we are able to see now about 14 billion light years away. And in case you're wondering, a light year is not a measurement of time, it's a measurement of distance. Because time is affected by gravity. Gravity, time, distortion. We've proven it. Here comes a physics lecture. I'll keep it simple. We took identical chronometers, put them on the surface of the planet and in a satellite, and they actually track time differently because of the effect of gravity. So it doesn't measure how long it takes light to get there. And there are other, we'll stay out of relativity. But anyway, and so we're seeing it, and God made this massively, why would God make such a huge universe? Well, one, because it does show off how big he is. Yes. We have a big God, but also for his own enjoyment. God just calls the angels over and goes, hey, look at that. Look at all those. And God calls every single one of them by name. By the way, I was raised calling it outer space because it was believed that it was mostly just empty space. My grandchildren probably be raised calling it something else because it's not empty at all. We've more than tripled the number of known galaxies in the last 6 months because of what we can now see. It's really cool. God just filled the universe. It's impressive because God's impressive. But God did it. God sat back and said, man, look at all of this that I made. But of all of it, the most important thing is the little marble we live on. And so God sat back and so God was not tired. And so God accomplishing his plans and then sitting back and enjoying them becomes a pattern for you and me. We have a Sabbath day, and it follows that pattern. So that's the first rest, God's rest from creation. He was finished, he was done. So if God was finished and was done, then how could there be a rest yet to come? That's the question that's now going to be addressed in verse 5, which is the second rest, which was the land. So again, in this passage, he said, they will not enter my rest, quoting Psalm 95:11 again. This is not the creation rest, because that was done. This is, God promised when he brought them out of Egypt that he was going to bring them into the land. And so the rest was the land that they would enter. No more slavery, no more affliction. They would be in a land of peace and security and all of that. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience, again he appoints a certain day. Today, saying through David so long afterward, in the words already quoted, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. So here's what he's saying. Okay. God rested after creation. Then he calls Abraham. They end up to a lot of stuff, all of Genesis. Well, start in Genesis 12, go through Genesis 50, and that's the whole account of Abraham's family, how they end up in Egypt as slaves. Then God brings them out and promises, I'm going to bring you into the land. So rest from creation. Now there's going to be rest from the wanderings and the slavery and all that when you enter into the land. But David's going to come 400 years after that, and David says there's still a rest. So the passage asks the question, if God was going to bring them into the rest, how could David 400 years later say they still have not entered into that rest? And the answer is given in verse 8. For if Joshua, the one that led them into the land, had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So here's what he's saying. Something can happen, but it's not realized until later. So we do this in the United States every 4 years. So on Tuesday, November 5th of 2024, next year, we will elect the next president of the United States. Now, hopefully we'll know by that night or the next morning. But that's a whole nother subject. But the president is elected on the first Tuesday of November. But he's not president on November 6th or November 7th or the 10th or the 20th or through the month of December. He will not actually become president until January the 20th, 2025. 76 days for those of you that are trying to figure it out. 76 days from elected until becomes president. So there was the promise of rest that was given here. It's certified, it's guaranteed, but it's going to be a while before it actually happens. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, I don't know any other way to explain it, and I won't even try because we'll be here till 2. So everybody got it? Yeah, so you're like, yeah, I have no idea, but I get it. So elected, but doesn't actually become president until inauguration. So God promised the rest, so that makes it certain, but it has not happened yet. And so that's why he talks about the fact that it's David in Psalm 95 that says this. So how in the world then does that affect us? Because I was not there at creation. Neither were you. Some of you may remember Noah, but you weren't at creation. Some of you feel that old. I know because you tell me. So I wasn't there, and I was not with Joshua in the taking of the land, and I wasn't with David when he wrote this. So how does this then connect to us? Well, he says, look, here's the answer to that. It's found verses 9 and 10. So then, there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. So we look back to creation, back to them under Joshua entering the land, and now that causes us to look forward that for us, there still remains a Sabbath rest for us. In other words, there is a rest that is coming for all those who belong to Jesus Christ. Yes. And when we enter into that rest, we now know that we will be with him forever. So in other words, the work will stop, but the worship will continue for all of eternity. And so he says that there is a rest that we are still looking forward to. The promise, obviously, we understand then is heaven. Verse 10, for whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. And so here's what he's saying. We have been promised that heaven is ours if we belong to Jesus. That's our future rest. But here's the really cool thing. Just like this passage goes back and forth between a past rest and looking forward to future rest, it's the same for you and me. If you belong to Jesus Christ, he's got you. Relax. I'm just amazed how many uptight Christians there are who somehow think that we're still trying to work to make God happy. And you're a failure at it. That's why you're always depressed and stressed. Relax. If you belong to Jesus, your guilt is all gone. Yes. The rest is promised. You're His. Relax. Rest in Jesus. Yes. It's not about you being pleasing to Him. It's the fact that you're in Christ and Christ is pleasing to Him. Therefore, it's all good. You are forgiven. Listen, salvation is not a layaway plan and we're trying to pay it back. Jesus didn't buy us with a credit card and now God's hounding us down to pay back plus interest. Jesus bought us, paid for us, it's done. Rest in that. Relax, be happy, be joyful. You belong to Jesus, it's done, it's settled. He's got you for all of eternity. Yes. In other words, the work that Jesus did for our salvation is done. He rested. He's seated at the right hand, majesty on high. It's done. I'm thankful for that. Like it's done. But I'm not all the way in heaven yet. So not only can we relax because of the rest that's been accomplished by Jesus, but we also can relax because we know where we're headed. We know that we are going to be with Him forever. So because of that, we don't work to impress God and we don't work to please God or to earn something with God or to pay God back. We work because it's just a lot of fun to serve the Lord. Okay, we have 4 people who want to serve the Lord. It's a lot of fun to serve the Lord. There's joy in it. We enjoy doing it. And I know that non-Christians look at us and go, why in the world would you want to live that way? Because it's a great way to live. Because I already have Jesus, He says, I have life and I have it more abundantly. But the future rest is promised because Jesus said, I go and prepare a place for you and I will come and bring you to be with me forever. Like it's great. He's got me on both ends. So I can rest, and I know I'm headed towards rest. Elizabeth King Mills was born in 1805, and she died in 1829 at the age of 24. But in her brief life, she wrote quite a bit. One of the things she wrote was a song. And this is what it says. O land of rest, for thee I sigh. When will the moment come when I shall lay my armor by and dwell in peace at home? We'll work till Jesus comes. We'll work till Jesus comes. We'll work till Jesus comes, and we'll be gathered home. Yes. That is our song. That's our motto. That's what this passage is saying. If Jesus has got you, He's got you forever. Relax. It's taken care of. Now serve Him until He takes you home. Then you can worship Him forever. Look, I told you I love to hike. I love to hike the Grand Canyon. I hiked it, like I said, dozens of times. You know, it's interesting when I take someone there hiking or take a group and I guide them across the Grand Canyon, it's always harder work than they thought. It's always more difficult than they thought. They stop more than they thought they would. It's like, man, I'm telling you, I'm not hungry. You need to eat anyway. Every 4 hours, you need to fuel your body. You need to eat. Drink plenty of water. Get lots of salt to retain the water. You know, I got to kind of mama them. And probably if it was more compassionate, I'd be better at it. But regardless, it's like, so I'm trying to, you know, we get to the rim. And here's what happens, because it's so much fun. So we come around and there's the second tunnel. Now they're numbered from the top down. So you come around, there's the second tunnel. And you can see like, we're almost there. No. We still have ways to go. The trail's not getting any shorter. And then you come around and you break over, and there's the first tunnel. Now they don't say this time, are we getting closer? You can see it in their eyes. And I'm like, we're almost there. Just a few hundred more yards. We've been doing 4 miles of just, after doing 5 miles of up and steps, we've been doing 4 very steep miles of just lots of steps and switchbacks. And man, this is it. You can taste it. Let's stop and take a picture in the tunnel. So we stop and take, now the tunnel's only about 4 or 5 feet deep, but anyway, still kind of cool. Take a picture. And then we go on up, and then you take up some stairs, and then there's the big sign, Bright Angel Trailhead. I've never, ever, ever taken somebody on their first trip. And we get up there, I've never taken them on a second, third, fourth trip, really, for that matter. We get up there, and they go, man, I hated that. That was awful. Now, you can see the satisfaction in their eyes because they did it. It doesn't matter if it took a lot longer than they thought. It doesn't matter if they cramped. It doesn't matter if they had to eat some of my food and I had to carry their pack because they were just plumb exhausted, or I had to loan them trek poles or whatever else it is I've done, or help them with blisters or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can see in their eyes. We had a guy who took 23 hours to go rim to rim. Not me, I left him. And somebody else back with him. I can't go that slow. So yeah, we 23 hours. When he finished, you know what the first thing he did was? Called his wife. I did it. I did it. Now, I get this from people sometimes. They'll ask me, are you insane? Is there something wrong with you? Why in the world would you want to do that? Why in the world would you want to do that to yourself? Man, I love it. I love it. I'd go hike the thing tomorrow. I mean, matter of fact, it's been a few times. I just realized, wait, my wife's going to be away with grandkids. I'm going to go hike the Grand Canyon. So I'll just run up and go down the river and come home. And so, I mean, I enjoy it. You realize that for people that have never experienced Jesus, they look at your life and think, why in the world would you do that? And your answer is, man, I love it. I love it. And the thing is, the day is coming when we'll crest the rim. And it'll be over. And we won't look back with regret. We'll look back with satisfaction. Man, I want to finish the hike of my life knowing that I lived pleasing to Jesus. Yes, sir. That's the rest that we're looking forward to. That's why we live like that. But let me tell you, you will not live like that unless you are settled that you have already rested in Jesus. Once you know you belong to Him, that heaven's secured, forgiveness is guaranteed, your guilt is gone, then you can relax and just enjoy serving Him. Yes. All the way until we enter into that final rest. And let me just tell you, the final rest is going to be great. Yes. Describe it, I can't. The Bible can't even describe it. What do you mean it can't describe it? 2 Corinthians, Paul said, I was caught up into the third heaven, that's where God dwells. And I saw things I can't describe. In the book of Revelation, the Apostle John says, I can't tell you what anything will look like without using the word like or as. It looked like this, it was like that, it was as something else, it was like this and like that and like something else, and as something, man, I can't describe it. We have see-through gold streets. It's going to be good. But you don't get that rest unless you've got the first rest in Jesus. So watch what we have. God's rest at creation, Christ's rest at salvation, our rest when we enter into heaven. Let's work till Jesus comes. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for what you did in creation. We thank you for what Jesus did for our salvation at the cross and the empty tomb. Lord, I pray that you would create in us a heart and a desire to place our faith in Jesus, because the good news doesn't make a difference unless it's been received by faith, even as this text tells us. So God, I pray that you would put us into rest in Jesus. And then remind us that there is yet a rest to come, that we're still in the process of working, but our Sabbath rest is ahead of us, and know how great it will be. For it is in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.